I'm Fatheree.
This is Dave.
And this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
So welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 51st installment of the Tex-Trek podcast, where we will once again be talking about a Star Trek Discovery comic.
Do I sense that love is in the air?
Love is in the air. We're talking about a very, very special romantic relationship with the Star Trek Discovery Annual, which tells the backstory of Paul Stamets, including how he fell in love with Doctor Hugh Culber, the first real man-on-man relationship in Star Trek.
I would have said openly gay male relationship, no, I'm just like man-on-man just sounded funny. I'm only amused by
they have
it.
some man-on-man love that saves the multiverse.
Yeah. I mean, if you're not counting Kirk and Spock, then sure.
Well, there's definitely an argument to be made there.
Right, but surely the first serious depiction of it, and the first open one, so it's interesting that they called it an annual. There was not a usually an annual is a part of a special one shot once a year for an ongoing series.
Yeah,
Discovery does not have an ongoing series.
There's people that don't read comics don't care about that.
Yeah.
And you can pick this up collected in the same collection that has Star Trek Discovery Succession, which we talked about previously. And this is actually about
Succession, which is the mirror universe post right after all the shit went down in Discovery.
Yeah. It's basically a sequel to those mirror universe episodes we got in Discovery Season 1.
Yeah, what happened after everybody left and there was a massive power vacuum.
And like Star Trek Discovery Succession, the Star Trek Discovery Annual is written by Kirsten Beyer and Mike Johnson with art by Angel Hernandez.
Did Angel Hernandez draw the other one too?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I like his stuff.
But we're just going to jump straight in and talk about the story here.
I assume this is entirely flashback, although I don't know if there's any present-day bridging stuff.
Yeah, so this entirely takes place before the events of Star Trek Discovery Season 1.
Okay.
And we open with a very ugly starship that I despise the design of.
Yeah, it's like a completely planar ship. I'm hoping we can get a picture of this up. But it's got Disco's kind of separated core, or like a saucer section.
Yeah.
But it's as if it's in a... It's almost like you took the Reliant and the universe's largest truck ran it over, squashing it down into a single plane.
It looks like a Discovery saucer with like a horseshoe around it.
Yeah.
But it's the USS Somerville, and not only is this ship so ugly, but it's also getting like hit by asteroids. And the captain of the ship is trying to get her crew members back on board. They have personnel on board an asteroid collecting fungus. That was on this rock in space.
I know where this is going.
Yeah, so
so they're collecting fungus.
They're trying to beam them back aboard right before the asteroid that these guys are standing on in their spacesuits is about to collide with another asteroid.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't get them back in time, so they arrive on the transporter pad all smashed up.
Oh, that's messed up.
But they have the fungus.
So it reminds me of the horrible transporter accident in Star Trek: The Motion Picture. Jesus.
Yeah.
Beaming up like bodies that look like they'd been walked on by a dinosaur. Now, they're not that gory about it in here, but those are some dead dudes.
And so the captain goes into warp and leaves the asteroid field. We then cut to months later. The planet
Deneva,
which I guess is where the Denevian slime devils are from.
Yeah.
But we see Paul Stamets. He's in like his fungus garden with a whole bunch of exotic, weird mushrooms, and he's actually talking to all like these different species of mycelium.
So wait, this is not he's talking to all these mycelial species, but he has not yet received the super cool mycelium that they just got from the asteroid?
No, but we're gonna get into that.
Okay, that's interesting. I guess I thought that was kind of where he got into that. But I guess he was always a fungus man, right?
Yeah, he is an astromycologist.
Okay, so he's immersed in it, he just hasn't seen whatever crazy thing they found.
But like one of his assistants runs in, lets him know that Dr. Stamets, Dr. Straw wants to see you right away. We know Dr. Straw from the 3rd episode of Discovery.
He was on the sister ship?
Yeah, the USS Glenn.
Yeah.
And he unfortunately didn't survive the events of that episode, but...
Did he get rippered?
He got turned into like that weird, like, distorted, warped ball that the spore drive like did to the crew on there.
But at this time he's up and around. And Stamets, the dude comes in and Stamets is like, be quiet!
But he informs Stamets that the new specimen is here. And so Stamets is referring to it as Stella. Stella is here. Why didn't you say so? So, Stamets is kind of an asshole, especially in like the early episodes of Discovery, and they definitely like play up his assholiness here.
It's alright, it's one of the things I liked about him.
Yeah, it is. He does kind of feel like stereotypical, like
snippy gay guy.
Yeah, or like bitchy queen.
Yeah,
but
when I occasionally we got to bring up a comic, and this is tangential to X-Men, so it's within our rights. The first gay superhero character, notably, was North Star. Created before Alpha Flight, although I don't know if in those very first issues before Alpha Flight spun off if he was supposed to be gay, but he was a snippy, kind of queenish gay guy. And it's like one of those things where it's like, really ideally, we should be, we want to reach a point where every aspect of gay culture and can be represented, from the flamiest queens to super butch Johns. That can all be in there, and you I never minded that Stamets had a little bit of that snippiness in him. It's not like
it works. That's kind of his thing,
and it was not also like his defining thing.
He's got dimensions. He's got sides,
right?
And we actually see those explored here. But what he's excited about Stella is the Prototaxitus Stella Viatori.
Oh,
that's the mushroom that they got off of those asteroids.
Yep.
And that's like Latin for like star paths.
Okay.
Which they call it that because it can only be found on like these asteroids traveling across space. But
I see he's like got his eye on some science prize thing for it.
Yeah, the Z Magnes prize, and they actually mention that in Discovery when we see like the two of them when they're communicating with like FaceTime.
Yep.
And they're talking about like, oh yeah, we're gonna get that Z Magnes prize. That goes back to the Ultimate Computer on the original series,
right?
Dr. Daystrom had one.
Nice bit of continuity, yeah.
Yeah, so basically, like, this is the mushroom that they've been wanting to get their hands on, that they feel they can make some like major scientific breakthroughs with, and it was. I mean, we did see like a bunch of people die to acquire it, so it is hard to come by. I think the idea here is that they think it can be useful to them in their terraforming that they're working on. And I like the idea that people in this time period are like working on terraforming, because we know that the Genesis project is going to get developed a couple decades after this.
Yeah.
So that kind of fits in.
Right, Genesis wouldn't appear just out of nowhere. They mentioned overpopulation and hunger and all that as pressing needs around the galaxy still.
Yeah, but so this is just like a really amazing mushroom that Paul Stamets is just all giddy to have. And his friend Strahl, who he's kind of a prick to, but
that's the kind of guys he hangs out with.
But he lets him know that he's going with his wife Amelia to the Caecilian Opera, and he tries to get Stamets to go with him.
Mm-hmm.
But of course he's like, no, that stuff bores me. I'm about the science and this insane, crazy mushroom. So leave me alone and have fun at the opera. But we just see Stamets is just like completely amazed by the weird complexity of the Proto-Tacitus Stella Vittori. And meanwhile, Stroll does attend the opera, and we learn that like his wife, Amelia, is also involved with some of the scientific projects they're working on, and specifically the terraforming.
She should be a good ally to them later on.
You would think. But back in the lab, Stamets has made like this amazing breakthrough when he discovers that there's actually like a network that can span vast distances of space that's connecting these spores from the star paths. And so he says, what if it's not just named star paths? What if it creates them?
Not sure if that's quite how the science of it all works, but...
That kind of feels like when your name is Etta Candy, but you're like a fat lady who eats candy.
It's another comic reference, y'all. That's Wonder Woman's friend.
Yeah, I was going to tell them to comment if they know where that's from, but...
It's too late.
Whatever. You can comment anyways. So, this is where he gets the idea of maybe they can use that for, like, transportation, because they have this energetic connection from one spore to another spore, and it's what they talk about in Discovery, but I feel like while I'm trying to explain it out loud, I'm not really sure if I understand what the science of that's supposed to be.
Right, like it all might be some kind of slightly janky pseudoscience, but I'll be curious to read this post-podcast and see if I feel it holds together, at least as kind of technobabble.
But I mean, like the way that like fungus works in real life is that it can have like these vast roots that connect. Like underground and stuff, and these very like intricate networks. And so basically what they're saying is like there's no physical root connecting these spores, but there are signals that pass between them.
Right.
And I think it gets into like quantum entanglement and that type of stuff.
Yeah, just assume that Geordi LaForge appears and says some super hot technobabble.
Because for a while they were thinking like, oh, you could use this for communicators. But then Stamets is like, oh no, we could use this for like transporters to like transport long distance. And so they go to Alpha Centauri 2 years later, and they're essentially giving a TED talk to like a room full of important people. And they're talking about how, we can use this fungal network to communicate these vast distances and travel these vast distances undetectable to the naked eye. And
I'm sure the people at the TED Talk thing are like, that's neat, it's probably never going to actually happen, but it's neat.
Yeah, and they kind of get laughed at, because people are like, yeah, well, that just totally defies the laws of physics. And someone even says, like, really? Mushrooms are the secret to infinite matter transfer across unlimited distances? And that's actually what I said when Star Trek Discovery established that.
Right.
But no, their TED Talk doesn't go too well, and so... afterwards, they're at the bar getting a drink, and
it's interesting. His buddy is like, "We're mycologists, Paul. Face it, we've never been and never will be the cool kids in the room." So.
Which that's actually what every mycologist ever has said.
Sure,
I take that back. I know a lot of people who would love to hang out with mushroom experts.
I think we're talking about a different application here. So while they're like they're moping about it, like, are they at a bar?
Yeah. And Paul Stamets hears some humming, and he notices other gentleman sitting at the bar, which we know is Doctor Hugh Culber.
A handsome man with a light facial hair and a warm... Well, he's actually not a warm demeanor there, but he's a good-looking fella.
Yeah, and he says, "Excuse me, is that Kelsian opera you're humming?" And
Culber is like... Yeah, you know it?
Yeah, he's like kind of excited. He's like, oh yeah, you want to talk about Kelsian opera? But no, Stamets tells him that he hates it, and his ears thank him in advance for not humming it anymore. And so Culber says what we all know about Stamets, that he's rude.
I like the way, the breakdown. He's like, you're rude, and you think you're funny, and you have bad taste in music. That's a pretty harsh shutdown.
But as Dr. Culber is leaving, he does let him know that your lectures are better than your manners. I particularly like the part about star paths. Good luck. And Stamets says to himself, I like him, as Dr. Culber walks away. But then Straw has a meeting with an Andorian Starfleet captain. I believe that is a captain's uniform.
Yep. Always pleased to see the Andorians repping.
And he basically says, like, look, I know everyone in that conference hall didn't really care about your presentation, but Starfleet is actually very interested. We would love for you to work for us, and we can, set you up with a great lab, great resources. You'll have whatever you need, and we can do some cool stuff with your Star Paths mushroom. And so he makes an offer to Straw. And then Straw's having dinner with his wife. And I can't really tell her species. I don't know if she's human, because she kind of looks pink.
She has this kind of lavender tone. I think she's supposed to be a humanoid alien of indeterminate species, who just happens to have lavender skin because it's visually interesting.
Yeah, but she wants to have him back, doing the terraforming stuff with her. And Straw is thinking about going to Starfleet. And she lets him know that, Starfleet, they just pursue everything. And we both know how easy it is to get lost in an organization like that.
Sounds like Carol Marcus and her son contemplating Starfleet life.
It was like Carol and David Marcus were both kind of skeptical of Starfleet.
And they, in some cases it seems rightly so, although her worst fears were really just because of Khan's shit.
But we do see more of that reflected in Stamets here in a moment. And he's actually on a space station, which I love the space station. It's actually from Star Trek 09, and they're using it here.
Yeah, nice.
But I love that design.
It's pretty cool.
And, so the Kelvin...
It's the big space station that they all launched from Earth when they went on the rescue mission to Vulcan, right?
It's like the Kelvin Starbase.
Yeah, it's a big-ass base.
But on board the station, Stamets is humming the Caecilian opera, and
I like it. Yeah, Culber walks up and he's just like, hypocrite.
Yeah, but Stamets blames it on Culber for getting it stuck in his head. But this is where he sees that Culber is Starfleet, because at this point Culber is wearing his full white Starfleet doctor's uniform, and he's letting him know that he's going back to his posting. But this is where they agree to stay in contact, even though they're having to part ways. So this is kind of like the beginning of their flirtation.
Yeah, and Stamets is like, well, why don't you tell me how to contact you so we can keep arguing?
Yeah.
So it's a little kind of back and forth, kind of a love-hate thing going on, but they're clearly kind of both, there's some eye contact going on and there's a connection.
Yeah, so that's the beginning of their courtship.
I like it, and that seems to fit them both.
Yeah, and it seems pretty real. But then back on Deneva, Straw informs Stamets of the offer to go with Starfleet. And Stamets is totally against this, and it's very much in character with what we saw of him in Discovery, where he was kind of against the military and didn't want his science to be used for anything weapon-based. It's at one point in here he actually says, Starfleet's just going to take my mushrooms and try to figure out how to make a torpedo out of them.
Right.
And so it's interesting that even with Starfleet being the exploratory force, I do kind of buy that, there are some people that in other aspects of Federation society that might not like them as much because...
Right. Well, in a future where everybody is a little bit more pacifist-oriented, Starfleet still is going around, they're pacifists with guns and stuff on their ships and, some military elements.
But this is where things get weird, is because after arguing, Paul goes to hang out with his in the Stella Garden.
Yeah. With
his Star Path mushrooms, and as he's talking to them, he decides that he wants a taste of his mushroom, and apparently it tastes minty.
Yeah.
But then he has it
almost looks like it sort of reaches out a little branch to him. But
I don't think it's reaching to him, but...
Oh, yeah, you're right. It's not... I got the sense of motion, but it doesn't. Yeah, he definitely is grabbing a little bit on his finger.
Yeah, but basically after he puts that on his tongue, it kind of is like acid trippy.
Yep.
But he passes out in the garden, and Straw finds him. And he's like, why would you do that? Why would you eat the mushrooms? But Stamets says, nothing in our research indicated that there'd be any type of effects like that. But Strahl says, you'd rather do this than go work for Starfleet. And Stamets says, I'll eat every last spore before I see them on a Starfleet ship.
That's a little odd.
But at the same time he's saying that, he's also talking back and forth with his friend, Doctor Culber.
New BFF.
This is, I see this in, like, movies and stuff lately now. Like, I guess, like, romantic comedies and things. Whenever you have, like, a couple meet, they always do, like, a very, like, modern version of, like, talking to people now. Is always, like, through, like, texting. Or I guess, like, something like this would be, like, talking on Skype.
Right.
But, because I guess that's how, like, most romances work now. At least, like, in the early stages.
Right. There's going to be a lot of texting and stuff going
on. So we definitely get the sense that they've been, talking for months, and they are continuing the experimentation, and they're now ready to try to transport a living object. So they have, like, this ugly little hairy frog thing. They have this cool little continuity thing here where Stamets says, I wonder if this is what Emory Erickson felt like the first time he tested his transporter. Emory Erickson being a character we meet in Star Trek Enterprise, who invented the transporter on Earth.
Okay, that's kind of cool.
I don't like saying he invented it because there were aliens who had transporters before humans did.
Right, but he brought it to the front for Federation.
Yeah. But they are able to successfully transport the frog from their facility on Deneva to... Where are they? Beta Darius. But they are able to successfully transport their frog from the Deneva station to Beta Darius. So they're making progress with this.
I see that he says the mycelial network is transversible. That's the big breakthrough.
Yeah. So this is like the early steps to getting to the point to where you can transport an entire ship. And the next step for them is to do a human test. And then we have Strahl and Stamets in a bit of an argument.
If I know anything about Star Trek, you do not spend a few years on human testing or decades or anything like that. Dr. McCoy jams it into himself and he sees what happens.
That can happen, but not in this case. Because, because Strahl is reluctant. He says, even though, like, the simulations are good, there's still, like, this weird distortion we picked up in the spore dispersal ratios, so it's not ready for human trials. But Stamets is like determined to do it, and he gets he does like a really dick move here, where he basically accuses Strahl of, this is about your wife. You've been away from Amelia too long, and you want to go back to her, and you're getting in the way of all the work we've been doing. Because Strahl wanted to take a break until they could figure out the weird anomaly they were getting in some of the simulations.
Yeah, that's a pretty jerk move on Stamets' part. Yeah. I mean, we know he's driven by his research and a bit of personal, or not a bit, but like a fair amount of personal glory. But yeah, it seems like a definite asshole move.
And then they have like a real personal fight where Strahl basically says, staff, leave us, get out of here. And he lets them know, why would you do that? Why would you talk about like this personal stuff? But Stamets is like, we're so close. I don't want to give up now. We can't slow down. So then we go back to Stamets chilling out in his room, talking to Hugh again, and they're actually talking about a cadet at Starfleet Academy who wants to come work on this with them, and it is someone who's super excited about the project that he's been involved with, but Stamets says, I would never want a Starfleet graduate working for me. And then Hugh says, well, this is the part where I have to remind you that I'm Starfleet. But he appears to be the exception to Paul Stamets' rule.
Mm-hmm.
But then he gets like an emergency call. Dr. Stamets to the primary lab. It's an emergency. So like one of their interns basically tried to do like the human transport himself and got like all mangled up.
Intern Dr. McCoy.
Yeah. He wanted to test it because he was scared that Strahl and Stamets were gonna break up and not finish the project.
That's a little bit. It's a little bit melodramatic.
He's a dedicated scientist, too.
Yeah. Now his leg arm's coming out of his chest or whatever.
Well, that's where dedication will get you sometimes. Then we have like a more heart-to-heart moment between Stamets and Hugh Culber, where basically Stamets is saying like, he blames himself for Charlie's death.
Right, he's actually kind of finally taking some responsibility for the kind of things that can happen with his crazy zeal. Yeah,
and Dr. Culber says, underneath your scientifically detached facade beats a loving heart. And he, so it kind of gives you the impression that this is like the one guy who can like look beneath Stamets' like bitchy asshole exterior.
Yeah.
And can connect with his emotional side. Stamets says, he's determined for that death not to be in vain, and 1 week later, they're ready to do the human trial, and Stamets lets Strahl know, like, look, I'm just going to do this on my own. You can, just like, go be with Amelia, go live your life, whatever. But this is on me. If it doesn't work out, then just blame it all on me, and you can go be with your wife. But Strahl says, no, Paul, it's on me too. If you're going to do this, I'm not going to let you do it alone. So he actually like flips the switch to transport Paul Stamets. And when he arrives at the Beta Darius, he lets them know, bad news, you're stuck with me. You survived the transport.
Mm-hmm.
And so
I'm not sure that this teaches a good lesson about the scientific method, but
there's some beats that we didn't see that they skipped past,
Right.
They return to Alpha Centauri and give another TED talk, but this time they're saying like, look, we can like transport a person. They do establish here that the Starpath's mushroom, the Prototaxitus Stella Viatori is very rare, and so it's a super limited resource. But I guess let's try to explain like why this stuff doesn't get used more often. And I still kind of feel like Discovery has some explaining to do about like why we don't have more spore drives in later Star Trek. But basically it's
like dilithium but rarer.
The Starfleet Andorian comes to them again, and he makes them another offer, and saying that he wants to use this for propulsion. You can transport a person, but Starfleet, we're thinking, what if we could transport ships like this?
Mm-hmm.
And so then we have Strahl and Stamets. I guess it's basically like on their flight back to Deneva, but they're in like a shuttlecraft. Another Kelvin design, by the way.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't recognize that one.
That's like when McCoy and Kirk sign up for Starfleet. Yeah. They're on the recruitment.
All I got left is my bones.
Yeah, that's not why your name is that. But anyways, but yeah,
I'm super into skeletons, Jim. They call me Bones.
Ex-wife took everything but my bones.
And I'm into skeletons too.
Boner for bones.
Oh, Jesus. Alright, what's going on here?
So, yeah, but Strahl saying, so look, they're going to give us each a ship. And we'll each have like our own staff. Like, this is pretty amazing. This is the best way we could explore this. And Stamets is still reluctant, though. And Strahl says, Paul, I left Amelia. Like, we're splitting up. I'm taking the Starfleet offer with or without you. So that's how dedicated Strahl is to this.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, it can either be 2 ships or it can be 1. But there's going to at least be 1. And so they return to the Stellar Garden, and Stamets begins to freeze the mushrooms. And Strahl's like, oh, you'd rather like destroy all of these than go work for Starfleet? And he says, no, I'm freezing them because I want them safe for transportation. And we're gonna do this thing. And he finally gives in.
He says like Starfleet would do this without would put our research to use anyway. At least this way we can have some say over how it's done.
Yeah, and I think he doesn't want like Strahl and working with Starfleet like without him. Like he wants to have like some influence on what's going on.
Right.
But I like what he says to him, where they kind of get like a bit of competition, with their 2 ships, the Glenn and the Discovery, where he says, "Oh, don't be fooled. I will work out my frustrations by trouncing you in the race to perfect a spore drive." Then we see the USS Discovery finally. Although it's not the version of the Discovery we see on the show, the saucer is like a little different, where it has like this ribbing that was actually on like that early Discovery trailer that where the ship wasn't even.
Yeah, they did a pan around.
Yeah, this is kind of like a hybrid between that and the final version. So that's really weird. I don't know if this was just based on like an earlier concept,
or the idea is just that they had, before they kind of got deep into the project, the ship kind of underwent some physical structure engineering to accommodate
like some refits or
mycelial.
Something. But yep,
and he meets with Lorca.
Yeah, so he comes on aboard. He is a lieutenant in Starfleet now. He is a commissioned officer, which sometimes that happens in the military. They can put someone through officer training if they have like education or something that like the military wants to use. They can put you through officer training and then make you an officer.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we have Lorca on here, and essentially,
Stamets is demanding a certain. He wants a crew to.
He wants to be able to hire his own staff.
Right, and he's got one in particular he wants.
Yes, and then he also gets a surprise when he sees Hugh on the ship. And Dr. Culber lets him know that he is transferred to the USS Discovery and will be part of the medical staff there.
Right. That is not the person he wanted for his staff. It was Culber who requested the transfer.
Yeah. And like we see the two of them kiss, which this might be their first kiss because before there was kind of like long-term relationship.
Right. There was probably some sexting though.
But then we have the engineering test bay set that we see a lot in Discovery Season 1, and we see like the containment thing that they keep the eventually will imprison a tardigrade in temporarily. But we see Stamets and Tilly meeting for the first time, and she's very Tilly-ish.
Right. And he doesn't know who she is at first, right? Yeah, she's like, I wrote those letters, right?
Yeah, she comes running in there yelling Lieutenant Stamets, and then she's like, "Oh, that was awkward. I was yelling way too loud." And he's just like, "Who are you?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, I'm Cadet Tilly. I wrote all those letters to you." And he's like, "Okay, well, get to work then."
Yeah. And she's her usual excited self.
Yeah, and then the last thing we see is like Stamets smiling, and I'm not sure if he's excited because he's like, "Oh, that's a good kid. She'll be."
Yeah, well, he's got that kind of wry smile that he does. It's not like this is the best day of my life. It's more like, yeah, this could work out.
But or I think maybe he's happy to be working with his mushrooms, even if it's on a ship. But yeah, I mean that's pretty much all it is. It's kind of I guess it's kind of a cute little story that I kind of liked the mushroom side of things more than the romance side of things. But it was also some of the mushroom stuff like kind of weirded me out.
Well, here's a question: when is it Stahl or what's
Strahl? Yeah.
Strahl. When he died, did Stamets react much?
Yeah, he said the actual thing is that like he like bends over his body and he says like farewell, my friend, or something like that.
Okay. That's interesting. That gives an interesting bit of added dimension to that this was not just some one-off kind of buddy, but somebody who he really rose through the ranks with and who was integral in all the early testing.
I think that was my favorite part of the comic was just like their partnership and how they would butt heads.
Right. I like this stuff with Culber in it. It was, I think it needed someone who was maybe a bit of a better dialogue guy to sing. Like you needed something back and forth and not just quite the bare bones opposites connecting.
Yeah, their conversations were kind of boring.
Yeah,
but they felt real.
It's true. It did feel kind of relatively true to the characters and stuff.
But just kind of mundane.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm gonna say they should have gotten Bendis to write those scenes.
I didn't want to say that because Bendis' writing. Bendis would have done that stuff good, but he would have done a bunch of other stuff wrong.
Yeah, I know. You when you pay for Bendis, you're gonna get the good and the bad at the same time.
It's a mixed bag.
Yeah. So where are you at overall on the Discovery comics? We've seen one about the life and times of T'Kuvma. We've seen the rise and fall of the Terran Empire after the events of Discovery, and now we've seen sort of this romantic interlude and filled in backstory for Stamets.
Yeah, my favorite would be Star Trek Discovery Succession, the Mirror Universe story.
And I guess they're all prequels. After
no, that's a sequel.
That's true. That's true. Well, I was about to say, yeah, like I'm not going to even say it's common wisdom, but there was a segment for sure of the fan community that sort of seemed to when Solo, that Star Wars spinoff, kind of underperformed at the box office. That I saw various think pieces that were like, people don't want no more prequel stuff. Is that kind of how you feel? Like, are you a little done with that?
I mean, I don't mind good prequel stories. In fact, I like some of the prequel stuff with T'Kuvma, but I think there's just such a fatigue with it because that's such easy stuff for like the tie-in material to go for.
Right.
Like with the Star Trek Discovery novels, there's 3 that are already out. There's a 4th one coming out, and they're all prequels.
Right.
And I know, like, well, what else can they really do? It's like either that or no Discovery novels.
Right.
But I mean, well, that's not true. You could do like a Harry Mudd on like a side adventure or something like that. But yeah, it's
By the time I guess I was reading Star Trek novels in the 80s, there were the movies had just kind of gotten going. With Star Trek 2 and 3 had kind of just come out, and the books were kind of starting to go into high gear. But the show was done with, so like the characters were out there, and there were a lot of flashbacks to the show, which I guess. I don't know, do you call it a prequel at that point? They're flashing back to an old era.
No, I feel like at that point it would just feel like a new episode.
Yeah, that's what they felt like to me. Like they were interesting, longer episodes, doing some of the things you can do in novels that are hard to do in a 1-hour show.
But I think where I enjoy tie-in material the most is when they can go like a step further. Mm-hmm. And like a lot of times they'll have that stuff blocked off where the licensors can't touch it because they're like, no, but we might actually like make a show or a movie or something set there. So it normally has to be like off limits for a little bit, and then they'll let people play ball with it. Like kind of like with like the Kelvin stuff, they have stopped the Kelvin comics,
right?
Because they don't know what they're doing with the movies yet. But if like there's no movies for a few more years, it's kind of like everyone's just like, well, yeah, it looks like we're never gonna have another Kelvin movie,
right?
Then we'll get like a Kelvin comic or maybe like some Kelvin books
where they can do whatever the hell they want. I remember one of the books, I think it was called Doctor's Orders, and it was all about the situation. They contrived a situation where Dr. McCoy ended up in command of the Enterprise, and he had to kind of like wing it past the stuff he didn't know and use some old Southern charm and wit, keep his wits about him, and it was interesting to see how he would command. It was kind of ultimately not I will never do that again kind of thing, but they also showed him being surprisingly effective sometimes.
Interesting.
It's just random memory, but it was like, that was one that I really enjoyed. I kind of like when you can, it's in a way, it's kind of what happens, I guess, with fanfic and stuff these days. I don't particularly read fanfic, but I kind of get the impression that they'll zero in on characters like that, and also have them in a relationship with somebody so they can ship them. But yeah, it was. I mean, really, it was about like seeing more of Dr. McCoy.
Well, out of the Star Trek Discovery comics, which one? I know, like you didn't actually read them,
right?
Like, which one stood out to you from us just talking about them?
So the Klingon stuff is always a tough one for me. So I think it's somewhere between Succession and the annual with Stamets. Oddly, I think because Succession was kind of so like sort of pulpy, and sometimes when I see so many characters getting killed, I almost kind of like stop to take it too seriously because I'm like, okay, they're never going to acknowledge this. It's just too many big things happening. But it was well thought out for the most part, I think. But I think I would actually ultimately kind of go with the annual. It's got some flaws, but I think it felt truest to kind of what I like in Discovery. It had characters I knew and loved, and not their mirror universe counterparts, but the ones I actually liked, and I got to see more of them.
And that's my second favorite. And I don't love either one.
Yeah.
But I like a good bit of Succession. I like the annual, I guess.
Assuming Discovery, the show, gets a nice long run of many years, I wonder how they will continue to develop. Because, like, I've followed Next Generation comics since they first started coming out from DC in, like, right exactly at the time the show launched, so early that the earliest issues were clearly written by people who had maybe only seen an episode or two, or maybe even only read scripts. And there was a very rocky start. And I think these guys are off to a better start, but
because they have Kirsten Beyer, one of the staff writers,
right,
helping them.
But we also know that Discovery Season 1 itself had to go through some growing pains to kind of get, the writers themselves would talk about, what was the episode where they felt that at least somebody said that they thought that things started to gel?
That was like episode 6, I think, Lethe.
Right, so like at the halfway point.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can forgive him for not quite getting off on the, with the strongest foot. There's good material in there, but there's
a lot of virgin territory they can explore.
I mean, in some ways, I feel like the various Next Generation comics I've read over the years have mostly been kind of and the best stuff I've read has probably been from IDW and the Tiptons.
Yes.
And how long has it been since Next Generation was on the air? A couple decades.
Like 24 years, I think.
Yeah. So yeah, we can give them a little bit of time to develop it and see where they go. The characters will continue to become sort of more iconic. They'll figure out what directions they want to do with them.
Well, all y'all should be sure to comment and let us know what you would like to see with Star Trek Discovery comics, and which one of these that we've talked about has been your favorite.
Do you want to see a Section 31? Do you want to see the Adventures of Saru when he went crazy from?
Well, we're gonna get that Captain Saru comic. It's going to be in a prestige format that comes out in February.
Yep,
that'll actually be while Season 2 is on the air.
Okay, that's cool.
And we might talk about that, but I don't know. We get we get weird reactions to when we talk about like comics or books. So it kind of seems like y'all don't like that as much. So if you want us to talk about...
That's not real.
If you want us to talk about the Captain Saru comic coming out in February... then comment and say so. Make your voices heard.
Damn straight.
But the next podcast, we will be running down the wish list of me and Dave will both put together a list of the top 10 things we want to see in Star Trek Discovery Season 2.
This will be exciting because it's kind of how we kicked off
Season 1.
Season 1.
We did the same thing.
And now that we know so much more, there'll be very different thoughts running through our heads.
Yeah.
Is that actually going to be next, or is there going to be one of the shorts?
No, that'll be next.
Okay, cool.
But and I'll also be talking about the next and final installment of the short treks about an hour after it airs in the United States, and it's going to be exciting because we're going to have Harry Mudd return.
Nice.
So to talk about that. But yeah, this is the final Tex-Trek podcast of 2018.
Yeah.
So we will see you.
Thanks for sticking with us.
And we will see you in 2019. And until then, as always, live long and prosper, y'all. Thank all of you so much for checking out this installment of Tex-Trek. I hope you enjoyed it. Please be sure to like our YouTube videos and subscribe to our channel. Audio-only version of episodes are available at our website, www.tex-trek.com. Please check out our site, especially if you just want an audio-only podcast. We have that available for you. Y'all can also keep up with us online. You can follow us on Twitter, @TXTrek, or you can check us out on Facebook at www.facebook.com/tex-trek. Please, by all means, let us know what you think by dropping a comment anywhere you see fit. We definitely want to hear your feedback. Let us know what you liked and what you would like to see more of, what you would like to see differently going forward. If you want to email me directly, go ahead. I can be reached at fathereeactual@tex-trek.com. Thank all y'all again. Take care.